Burt Williams was born on January 26, 1983 in Reading, Pennsylvania. Mr. Williams had a pretty good childhood and had a lot of friends. He enlisted into the Marines right after high school.
When the time came for Mr. Williams to pick the branch of military he wanted to pursue, he was torn between the Air Force and the Marines. He explained his decision by stating,
"Truthfully, I went in the Marines because I knew it was tougher, and that's something I wanted to accomplish, and I took a lot of pride in it, and I knew I would take more pride in joining the Marines than any other branch, so that's why."
For basic training, he traveled to Parris Island in South Carolina. He described a normal day in basic training.
A lot of exercising, a lot of yelling, did a lot of stuff as like a team, sort of, relying on others, and they were relying on you, activities. We went on a lot of long hikes with packs, rifles, a lot of marching, we called it drill, just a lot of stuff that would kind of break you down, and then they wanted to build you up into their ways.
His drill sergeants were very memorable, and although mean and nasty, he knew building strong Marines would take a firm, harsh individual.
Upon completing boot camp, Mr. Williams was sent to specialized training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where he was trained in motor transport.
In Iraq, Mr. Williams would have the job of driving in security convoys.
During training, he learned how to drive the Humvees in which he would eventually transport supplies or people safely from one place to another.
After completing all of his training, Mr. Williams was placed in the 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines, and was stationed at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina.
He traveled to Iraq for his first tour. The Marines invaded on March 20th, 2003. They were fighting in Operation Iraqi Freedom, and that's what Mr. Williams fought in during both his combat tours.
The goal of Operation Iraqi Freedom was to take down Saddam Hussein and then help the Iraqi people build themselves back up without the control of Hussein.
They spent a period of time trying to secure 2 bridges going over the Euphrates River.
The Marines needed full access to those bridges so other units could get through.
The task was rough, and so were the conditions Mr. Williams and his unit were staying in. He recalled,
"The first time I was there, that's when we first invaded Iraq. I slept on the ground for 6 months, where we would take turns sleeping on the hood of the Humvee because it was warm. The warmth of the engine would come up, so we would take turns sleeping on the hood. Other than that, you slept on the ground in a sleeping bag right next to our truck." My second time was much better, at the power plant, like I mentioned earlier. It was kind of like a big open warehouse, and we had cots in there where we slept in. It was kind of like bunk beds. And there was actually a roof over our head this time, so it was much better the second time.
The Marines in Iraq weren't handed the best conditions, but they made the best of what they had and found ways to entertain themselves.
The main mission of his second tour was to secure a power plant that powered the majority of southern Iraq.
One of his many duties was to take any injured Marines to the 31st Combat Support Hospital in Baghdad and make sure they got there safely and quickly.
He also was responsible for providing security for, during, and after the raid. Sometimes they found things that they were able to take with them. During one raid, they found an Iraqi gas mask and a bag.
Another object he picked up along the way was a fragment of a bomb they had previously dropped. Even one piece was heavy, so we could only imagine what the damage of a whole bomb could do.
Before any bombings, they would drop flyers warning the Iraqi citizens of an upcoming bomb. They wanted to make sure the innocent civilians wouldn't be harmed.
They also did humanitarian missions. One was labeled as Operation Blueberry Muffin.
The Marines were given a lot of Otis Spunkmeyer blueberry muffins, and they went door to door distributing the muffins to the Iraqi people.
During his time in the Marines, Mr. Williams made a lot of good friends, and he and those men still talk to this day.
When it came time for Mr. Williams to return home, he was overjoyed to finally be able to see his family. Being away for so long had been hard.
Mr. Williams received many medals for all of his service in the Marines. One of his awards was the Good Conduct Medal. The Good Conduct Medal recognizes good behavior and faithful service in the Marines.
Mr. Williams was also awarded the Sea Service Deployment Ribbon 2 times. This award is given to any Marine or Navy member who completes a deployment at sea.
He also received the Global War on Terrorism Medal. This medal recognizes the contributions made by members of the armed forces in fighting terrorism throughout the world.
Mr. Williams received the Defense Service Medal as well. The Defense Service Medal is given to any honorable active member of the Armed Forces of the United States starting September 11, 2001 to the present time.
Another award Mr. Williams received is the Navy Marine Achievement Medal. It is awarded to members of the armed forces to anyone in the position of lieutenant commander or major and below.
He also was awarded the Combat Action Ribbon 2 times. He got this ribbon for completing his 2 tours in Iraq.
One of the biggest awards he received was the Presidential Unit Citation. It's awarded in the name of the President to those who show extraordinary heroism in action against an armed enemy.
Mr. Williams went into the Marines being a young adult fresh out of high school, but he came out a strong, independent individual. By the end of his service in the Marines, Mr. Williams had reached the position of an E4 corporal.
It was a good experience, you know. It was tough. I learned a lot from it, you know. It was definitely a life-changing event. It makes you who you are. I think I'm a better person for it. I don't regret it at all.